Hey guys, Columbus Models here, and we are back with a special episode. This is a shout out to all the mums. This is a special Mother's Day gift that I will be making today. My mum has a special interest in everything space and space travel and all of that goodness, so I have been making her a series of space related models that she absolutely loves, and because it's Mother's Day I'm going for a bit smaller. This is the Academy 1-288 Space Shuttle and Transport. She's been watching a lot of documentaries on space shuttles and all of that, and she totally nerds out on space stuff the way that I do on military stuff, so this is going to be a good one for her. Definitely learning a new set of skills while building space stuff, primarily because they are mostly white, and white is a horrible color to work with, but at least I'm getting a lot of practice in. So as usual, we're just going to go and have a look inside this box, and then we're going to go through the full build, and I can tell you, this build wasn't the model putting up most of the fight. You're going to see what else does. So, first up, let's have a look at the sprues. I lied, we're going to look at the instructions first. So this is just a simple A4 folded, double-sided. Pure black and white with not the best color callout scheme you'll see. It's a bit lacking in detail, and looking at reference photos, there are definitely some details that I did want to show off that the instructions didn't, so it's always good to do a bit of research. The instructions themselves are nice and simple. There are really not too many parts to this kit because of the scale, but it's pretty good. It's not a bad kit. I mean, it is Academy, which usually does a lot of middle of the road stuff, but yeah, the instructions nice and simple, easy to put together, all good. So this first sprue we have is most of the shuttle. There's not really much to it, and the entire fuselage and wing are molded together. You just have one fin, the boosters, and the stands to go on the aircraft on this one. And picking at random, the next up is the two halves of the fuselage. They get their own sprue, and one little detail I quite like is they've molded the sprue around the antenna on top of the aircraft to protect them. So it does mean that you get one more gate to clean, but that's fine. Up next are just the engine halves and the horizontal tail surfaces for the 747. We will see later on there are some issues with the fit of the engines, but you'll see that a bit later. Next up is the black lower surface of the shuttle. This weird black plastic has a sort of rubbery feel to it. I had a bit of trouble working with it. And lastly, for the coloured sprues, we have the wing surfaces and landing gear for the 747. So as you can tell, the 747 is all in grey and the shuttle is black and white in plastic. And the last sprue in total, we have the clear sprue. This mainly consists of a very nice stand for the aircraft and transport to sit on, so definitely using that. And otherwise we just have a very badly moulded cockpit windscreen, I will say. And lastly is the decal. So this offers a number of names for the space shuttle. You have the Columbia, Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour. So you'll see which one I use later on, and I will say I kind of regret the name. You're going to find out which one I use, and yeah. Otherwise, that's all the decals and that's all the sprues we've looked at, so let's get on to the build, shall we? So up first, instructions call for us to put the two fuselage halves together. So this took a bit of cleanup, and there are a few gaps that I will have to fill later on. After they're together, time to put the wings on. This is, honestly, the build for this will not take long. So this is just a quick snapshot of the process of building it. There is not much to this. This is actually quite a nice scale for doing a very fast build if you want to do it. The wings clipped on pretty well. One of them was fairly tight, the other one was fairly loose. So again, a few more gaps I have to put together, but that's fine. Up next is putting the tail surfaces on. So again, one was incredibly loose, the other one was incredibly fine. I did try and switch them out to see if they had a certain way, but no, they just were weird. After that, the engine halves were put together and we slapped them onto the wings. You can see that there are some fit issues with the engines, the big seam lines in the middle. And the last thing to do was to add the landing gear bay. To turn this into the transporter, these weird vertical fins were added to the tail. And that's it. After a bit of putty and sanding, that's all. That's the build of the 747. So, we'll get onto the shuttle right about now. The shuttle is even easier to put together actually. All it consists of is putting the upper and lower halves together, adding the tail fin, the boosters on the back. There are a few fit issues with this one as well, that is to be expected. It is Academy, they're not absolutely perfect. Then the booster cone cover type thingy mabobby goes onto the back. And that's even it for the space shuttle. There's really not a lot to it. I will say that black plastic is weird. It did melt in a weird way, so yeah, something I learned. One thing I have learnt with building NASA related vehicles is instead of using my airbrush for painting them all white, I just use a Tamiya rattle can. It is honestly so much easier. The finish and coat is much smoother and yeah, much better than I do with my airbrush with painting white. I hate painting white with a passion, so a rattle can it is, and it just works absolutely fine. After that, I masked up the space shuttle and painted all the black surfaces black. Of course, I didn't want to have bare plastic. I wanted to use a nice acrylic flat black just to give it the matte look of NASA. And then after that, the good part, peeling off the masking tape, which of course I do most of it off camera, but just slightly on camera so you can kind of see that I'm enjoying it, but you can't because I took it off camera. Time to paint the 747. As you just saw from that clip, I was using my airbrush and suddenly I lost all pressure in my compressor. However, it was still running and the piston appeared to be moving, or so I thought. So, because this is going to be a quick build, I'm going to show you disassembling my compressor to find out what the hell is going wrong with it. So, first up, removing the plates, removing all the unnecessary guff around it, and then opening up the piston bay. And as you can see the problem right here. The piston has worked its way off the crankshaft. That means I have to disassemble the entire piston just so I can get to it. For some reason, the piston arm actually just is screwed in actually to the crankshaft, which means that at some point this was going to happen. It just worked its way off. Yeah, it's a right pain in the ass, but what can you do about it? Well, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to fix it. So after disassembling the entire piston, that means that you can get access to it and you're able to screw it in. So I made sure to try and screw it in nice and tight. This is a pain in the ass though. I did find that trying to screw it in, my hands are too big, so instead I took the cover off the fan and then used that to thread it in. So at least this gives you an idea of what a compressor like this looks like, so you can take it apart and fix it yourself. So after reassembling it all, we're just going to give it a quick test, make sure it's working properly again. Always being careful to make sure the right screws go back in the right slots and vice versa. It is actually quite a good thing to get to know your equipment. So the last things to reattach is just the fan cover, as well as putting the protective shroud over and reattaching the feet. All in all, this took me about 10 minutes. All that's left is to give it a quick pressure test, make sure that the piston is moving correctly and we are getting pressure behind it, which we are. So now we're going to keep going. I got 3 minutes of airbrushing time before the piston slipped off the crankshaft again, which prompted a lot of swearing and more swearing. And I even changed languages for a while just because I was getting bored of swearing in English. After that, took another half an hour to completely disassemble my compressor even more, right down to the absolute bare bones, so I could get better access to the crankshaft and piston. Then, after using some Teflon tape wrapped around and a lot of brute forcing, the piston will no longer come off the crankshaft. I hope, otherwise if it does, this compressor is going to go through a window. Now I've got it fixed, now we can get back onto the build. The upper surfaces of the 747 were masked off, so I could paint the underside a light grey. Although I wanted light grey, this grey actually turned out to be a lot darker than I anticipated. After that, we get more satisfying action with peeling off the masking tape. And I hope that I show a bit more this time and make it a bit more satisfying for you viewers. Here's another lesson I learnt. Securing your camera properly. Yes, I am an idiot. Yes, I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. I'm just making it up. The final parts for the 747, putting the landing gear on, and of course decals, which I foolishly forgot to record, so you won't see that one. Up next, the black trim on the Space Shuttle needed to be put on. I, instead of masking and airbrushing, decided just to go with hand painting. And after that, the decals. So, as you can see, I chose Columbia, purely because, well, the name of the channel is Columbus. It wasn't until after I gave it to my mum, she said, the Columbia. That's the one that blew up on re-entry, wasn't it? So, a bit of faux pas by me on the name, but oh well. Lastly, for the Space Shuttle, all I did was a quick pin wash just to show off some of the panels. I decided not to pin wash the 747 just because it would be too much of a pain in the ass for me and it wouldn't look good. Lastly, for these two, it was time to finally put them together. Bit of super glue, and she's all good. She's looking alright now, but she's a bit of a tail dragger and I want her landing. Let's make the base, shall we? So the last thing to do was to put together the base and airbrush it black. And after that, I think we're all good and finished. Let's get on to the photo, shall we? So, as we show off the final photos, I'd just like to say, if you've made it to this point, I'd like to thank you deeply for watching my videos. And encourage you to watch the rest of them, subscribe, all of that bollocks, you know. And lastly, big shout out to my mum, happy Mother's Day. This is a present that she got on Mother's Day, and of course the video was much later because busy/laziness all combined into one. But however, this is going to make a very good addition to her little space nook. You'll see at the end of the video, I've made quite a few things for her in the space department, and she has a bit of a nook for it, so yeah. As usual, if you want to see more content made by me, you can check out the Micro Machines podcast. You'll find me and my friends there as we talk everything military and models and a whole lot of bollocks, really. But I'll link that into the description. A big shout out as well. I want you to go and see my other friends on YouTube. They are Floki's Models, Greg Scale Dioramas, and a new one, Nick the Scale Armourer. He's just starting out. He's a good friend of mine in Aussie, and he makes some very good stuff. So he needs some encouragement. Go check him out. He's a really good modeler. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.